very compressed scale. Down here, you can see this is a much more expanded scale. This is
that's
0 to 1.
urine down below, right?
Yeah.
Now you're comparing blood levels and urine levels. I'm talking about blood levels on the top model. I'm just asking you, based on the model you've testified to, what was the propofol concentration just prior to the 25 milligram alleged self-administration?
Sir, because it's a compressed scale, I can't give you an accurate number. All I can tell you is that the level appears to be low. I'm sorry, I don't have a more specific answer.
Is it based on the model you've testified to? It's basically at the bottom of the scale near 0. Is that fair to say?
It's close to, the bottom of the scale. That's correct.
And then at the time of the administration of the 25 milligram bolus, according to this model, it rises to about 4 on the axis there.
Are you referring to the rapid bolus here at this point?
Yeah, does that rise to about 4 micrograms?
Looks to be about 4, maybe 4.3, something like that.
And just prior to the self-injection that you've theorized about, just prior to the self-injection, how much propofol was in the urine based on your model of unchanged propofol in the urine?
Again, you're referring to this point, and it was slightly below the line that was measured at autopsy. But again, I would just emphasize for the jury that this is a very expanded scale, and when you start to put on variability, of course, so it looks like it's significantly lower, but again, we're dealing with the difference between 0.0, 0.05, and 0.1.
Okay, you've commented that the top model is very compressed in regard to time, correct?
No, I said it was compressed in terms of concentration compared to the lower scale. One goes from 0 to 0.15, the other one goes from 0 to 6.
Okay. I want to show you an exhibit which kind of zooms in on time. At the time you've alleged there was a self-administration at about 11:40 a.m.
Document is handed to Mr. Flanagan. And hand it back to Mr. Walger.
May this be marked Peoples 240, Your Honor?
It is.
Dr. White, this Peoples 240 essentially takes your model and zooms in at the time of death to focus just on these minutes from 11:39 to 11:43. So it spreads out the spike you mentioned because the time frame is more specific. Does that appear to be accurate to you?
It could well be.
Do you want to compare it to the
No,
model you testified to, defense quadruple view?
I would prefer to have it reviewed by the expert that I've been working with, but I think it looks like it's very believable. So, but again, as I testified, I'm not the expert in the pharmacokinetic modeling.
But you're the one who came in under oath and testified to these results and your interpretation of these results, correct?
Yes, because I believe in the integrity of the person doing the analysis, and they seemed reasonable to me based on my knowledge of the pharmacology of propofol.
And do you believe, or in looking at this, do you feel that the proposed self-injection by Michael Jackson matches the data that you're aware of regarding blood levels, things of that nature?
Well, it appears to match if Mr. Jackson was dead at approximately this time frame, yes.
Okay. And at the top of People's 240. The top graph, again, the peak reaches just above 4 micrograms per milliliter, just like on the model you testified about, correct?
Yes.
And you have the femoral vein concentration, as noted at top, autopsy, to about 2.6 micrograms per milliliter, correct?
Yes, but if I can just add, the times you have on the axis, I'm not sure how accurate those are, because it's not my speculation that the bolus injection occurred at 11:40, because I think that would have had the time of death earlier than I believe it occurred. So I think it be shifted to the right. But I think
I'm basing it on defense quadruple V you have in front of you that you testified about.
what I testified was that that was a model looking at 2 doses of 25 milligrams, one given rapidly, one given slowly. I did not make those graphs. Dr. Ornelas chose the time. I don't know how she decided to put the time of the bolus dose where it was on the graph, but you could just as easily shift it in either direction depending on when you think the time of death was. And what I'm suggesting is that I believe it occurred later, the peak, but because we were under a time crunch, we just got these graphs, I think the night before, perhaps Thursday, I'm not sure, it was either Wednesday or Thursday of last week. I didn't have time to ask her to redraw them. And as I stated several times, the reason I asked her to provide these was because I was interested in knowing about the urine. That's the primary thing. If there was a vast difference in the urine amount of the urine content, then it would suggest one model might be more accurate than the other, and that's what I was looking for.
So did I hear you correctly that you believe the self-administration happened later than 11:40? Was that what you said?
Correct.
Okay. Did you clarify that to the jury when you testified about these models last week? Did you say, I want to clear up an issue, I don't agree with this model? Did you say that?
I used those models, sir, to talk about the difference in the urine content. We weren't talking about the timing of death. To be honest with you, I didn't even notice that, so I apologize for overlooking that detail. But again, I would say that I only became aware of these models the night before my testimony.
And in this model that you asked Dr. Ornelas to create, or she offered to create, going down to the bottom chart, that's the one you're interested in, the urine, correct?
Well, I was interested in looking at the urine concentration at autopsy and how it would compare having given propofol 25 milligrams by 2 separate bolus injections versus 1,000 milligrams given by a 3-hour infusion.
And this line on People's 240, which is also reflected in front of you on defense quadruple V, I believe. Based on this model, you feel that the propofol in the urine levels syncs up and is consistent with your theory of these 2 separate doses of 25 milligrams, correct?
I think it syncs up, if you will, to use your words, much better than giving a 3-hour infusion of 1,000 milligrams, yes.
And you, Mr. Flanagan had specifically asked you about your feelings on this scenario, or why you based on this scenario, and you said it was consistent with Conrad Murray's statement to the police, correct? That was one of the reasons you found it?
Yes, his statement to the police said he gave 25 milligrams over 3 to 5 minutes, yes.
And it was consistent with a second IV line not being recovered at the scene?
Correct. An IV line, not only a second IV line not being recovered, but more importantly, an IV line containing residual propofol in a drip chamber and in tubing.
Well, if the IV line wasn't there, you wouldn't be able to get the propofol out of it, would you?
I'm sorry?
And then the third thing was that the amount of
Is there a question?
withdrawn. The amount of propofol in the urine closely matched the urine at time of autopsy. In other words, the amount of urine shown in the model matched the amount of urine at time of autopsy as far as the levels, correct? That was the third reason you gave?
Yes, the concentration of free propofol in the urine.
I wanted to show you another expanded view of Dr. Anästhesist's model. May this be marked People's 241, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. White, showing you People's 241, which now expands the time frame to about 10 minutes. So this chart showing 11:39 to 11:49, again rising to just above 4 micrograms per milliliter. Do you recognize what's depicted there as taken from the model Dr. Anästhesist created?
Yes, it appears to be similar, drawn in a similar fashion, but with somewhat a different time. It has a different time axis on the x-axis.
And when did Michael Jackson's circulation stop?
Well, it would be suggested that it would have stopped when the rapid bolus was injected, essentially when a peak level was administered.
So it was immediate?
It could have been an arrhythmia. It could have been. It's unclear. I'd just be speculating on the cause, but
Okay.
it's shortly, very shortly after.
Okay. For your model to work, it has to happen shortly thereafter in order to, because it quickly, the blood levels drop quickly from the 2.6 found in the femoral vein, correct?
Unless the circulation stops. And again, you refer to it as my model, and again, I prefer to give credit to the person who actually did the modeling.
Now, you've reviewed the autopsy report in your evaluation, right?
Yes, I did, some time ago.
And you noted, I assume, that Mr. Jackson had a strong heart, no known heart problems, anything of that nature, correct?
I don't know what you mean by a strong heart. It's not a medical term I'm familiar with.
I'll just give you the exact language. Your Honor, I have from the coroner's report, the findings of the cardiovascular system. May this be marked People's 242 for identification?
Yes.
This is taken straight from the coroner's report, Dr. White. And I'll bring you up a copy for your review. Looking at People's 242. Could you read that to yourself, Dr. White? And tell me when you've completed.
I finished.
And is there any indication in the coroner's findings that there's any problem with the heart of Michael Jackson?
No, there's not. But that
Now,
does not.
Also, you're aware, Dr. White.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the rest. No, there's not.
I was just going to add that there was no structural abnormality observed, but that doesn't preclude an arrhythmia.
Now, you're aware that Dr. Murray specifically said that after leaving Michael Jackson for 2 minutes, he came back into the room and he looked at the pulse oximeter right away, and his heart rate was like 122 beats. You're aware of that?
Yes, I think what he said was he saw a number on the pulse oximeter, and this portable pulse oximeter, and that is unclear given I don't know that there was a saturation value, and sometimes the
Well, let me
pulse-
just show you the actual transcript. Your Honor, I have a
Okay.
copy of the statement I just referenced, and it's actually, I believe it's on page 63 of the previously admitted transcript. May this one page...
Do we need to submark individual parts?
yeah, it's just the one summary statement.
We have the transcript. I don't want to keep on marking subparts. So you've got the transcript itself. Make reference to that, please. What exhibit number? Take a moment. And then just give us the page of the exhibit.
It's People's 198 is the exhibit, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I'm referring to page 63 of People's 198, the bottom. Can you see that, Dr. White?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Do you see where, actually, Dr. Murray is quite specific, that I checked and I looked at the pulse oximeter right away, and his heart rate was like 122 beats. Does that refresh your memory?
Well, I remember the comment that I believe said in his interview that he felt a thready pulse, and it was...
I'm asking about this comment. Do you see where Dr.
Yes.
Murray says he looked at the pulse oximeter and his heart rate was like 122 beats?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That would mean he has a heartbeat, correct?
Without feeling the pulse and knowing that there was a perfusing pulse, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Can I go to the next page of People's 198, Your Honor? And it's page 64. Do you see this, Dr. White, where Conrad Murray says, "So I felt for a pulse, and I was able to get a thready pulse in the femoral region." Correct?
That's what Dr. Murray reported.
So
Lines
you felt-
24 and 25.
Thank you.
64. Page 64, lines 24 and 25.
So he not only checked the pulse oximeter and saw 122 beats, but he then felt the femoral region and felt a thready pulse, correct?
He reported feeling a thready pulse, correct.
And that would suggest that his heart was beating, right?
Well, it might suggest that, or alternatively, it might suggest that Dr. Murray was simply feeling his own pulse, since it was very weak and thready, and in these kind of situations...
So is this one, you don't believe Conrad Murray when he says he felt a thready pulse in the femoral region?
I did not believe it was perfusing. He may have felt some...
He said he felt a thready pulse in the femoral region. Are you disputing that?
I'm just merely suggesting that clinicians can be deceived into feeling their own pulse when they're under stress and in this type of situation. And it's my feeling that he may not have actually been feeling a pulse that was perfusing, that is, was moving blood around the body.
Because if you felt a pulse, it doesn't match up with your new theory that Michael Jackson died instantly upon receiving this 25 milligram self-administration, correct?
It's not whether it corresponds or correlates with a theory or a suggestion. It's what happens clinically in these kind of situations.
Would you agree that the primary cause of Michael Jackson's death is that he stopped breathing?
I don't see any evidence of that.
Do you see any evidence that contradicts that?
I don't see evidence that contradicts either a respiratory or a cardiac event or a combined cardiorespiratory event following the rapid administration of propofol. to a
Are you-
patient
I'm sorry.
to a patient who also had extremely high levels of lorazepam.
Well, in your March 8, 2011 letter, you do reference respiratory issues as being a potential or presumed cause of death, correct?
Again, the article isn't before me, but I think it says cardiorespiratory is what I recall saying.
Okay. Is that...
And that was a preliminary letter that I prepared for the defense attorney, Mr. Flanagan.
And you called it likely cardiopulmonary arrest. The central nervous system depressant effects of this combination of medications can produce significant ventilatory depressant effects as well as upper airway obstruction. That's what you said in your letter to Mr. Flanagan, correct?
Yes, that's cardiorespiratory event is what I suggested
Right.
as a likely cause, because I couldn't distinguish between whether it was cardio or respiratory based on the information that I was provided.
But what you specifically explain is possible respiratory depressant and upper airway obstruction, right?
That's, of course, a possibility. Patients who
That's
have,
what you put in your letter, correct?
among other things, yes, sir.
Among other things, including the theory that Michael Jackson drank propofol, right?
Among the theory that he could have taken propofol. Did
Which
not.
you now reject.
Now that I have more data and more evidence, I can say that was extremely unlikely. In fact, I don't believe it was a contributing factor.
Yeah. May I have one moment to retrieve defense exhibits, Your Honor?
Please.
Can we go to some of these lorazepam simulations, Dr. White? Now, in this simulation that you testified about, and this is defense quadruple N, you're aware that what the stomach contents showed of this deals with free lorazepam, correct?
The free lorazepam that would be expected to be in the stomach at around noontime, yes,
Okay.
is
And in defense quadruple N, you're aware that the defense called Mike Hinson to standing. He's already testified that the amount of free lorazepam was 0.006 milligrams in the stomach. Can you tell me where that 0.0013 number comes from?
I would have to ask Dr. Ornelas. I believe
You understand what was found in the stomach was 0.006 milligrams based on the defense witness, Mike Hinson.
0.006, so it was much higher. Because that was
Point-
higher than what she assumed.
Okay, where did this number come from?
I would have to ask Dr. Ornelas. It's actually lower. You're correct. It's lower than what was actually found.
So you don't know where this 0.0013 came from?
I actually don't know. It could have been glucuronic conjugated. I'm not sure, but
So you came in and testified to this lorazepam model based on numbers from which you don't know where they came.
Well,
Is that correct?
It's a very, very small amount of free lorazepam found in the stomach. But as I testified, even a small amount of free lorazepam would suggest oral administration. And the fact that it's higher than what was used in this model is only more confirmatory evidence in that regard. But you're right, I didn't make the model. I would have to consult with Dr. Ornelas.
So as you sit here today, you have no idea where that .0013 milligram number came from, correct?
I would have to look at the tox reports and consult with Dr. Ornelas.
As you sit here today, right now, you have no idea where that .0013 milligrams came from, correct?
Not as I sit here today, sir.
That's correct?
Correct, sorry.
Thank you.
And this, on the bottom, it says residual lorazepam, assuming 10 milligrams per day for 5 days. Why was that put in there?
Well, she did the simulation so that you could try to take into account the fact that he had been receiving lorazepam prior to the day of his death. And we don't really have a good handle on that number, so of course that level is just a guesstimate, but it's more than zero, which was what Dr. Schaefer assumed in his model.
But where it's very specific, residual lorazepam assuming 10 milligrams per day for 5 days.
As I said, that was an arbitrary assumption based on what he might have been taking prior to the day of his death.
And the femoral drug levels of lorazepam are .169 micrograms per milliliter, according to the autopsy report. Do you know where this .164 came from?
It may be a typographical error.
But you wouldn't know because you didn't make the model, correct?
That's correct. But I'd be happy to ask Dr. Ornelas if you would like.
If Mr. Flanagan wants you to do that, you can do that. Thank you. And on this graph, then, can you tell me where it is, indicate with the pointer, if you could, where it is when Dr. Murray administers 25 milligrams of propofol to Michael Jackson?
It would be, well, it's 11, so it would be right around in this range.
Indicating about what time?
About 10:40, 10:45.
Thank you.
And the approximate location where it is when you put forward that Michael Jackson administered himself 25 milligrams.
Just shortly before noon.
And would you agree that the lorazepam levels, based on the model you've testified to, would actually be lower than at the time that you theorized Michael Jackson self-ingested than they were at the time Conrad Murray injected 25 milligrams of propofol?
On this model, they'd be slightly lower, yes.
I have a one-page graph highlighting that point, Your Honor. May this be marked Peoples 243 for identification?
Yes.
Dr. Schaefer, showing you Peoples 243.
White.
I'm sorry, Dr. White, showing you Peoples 243. Again, does this highlight the point you just made, showing the lorazepam level at 1040 and then being lower at 1140, based on the arrows and the time references?
Yes, on this model, which we've discussed previously, there's a huge degree of variability, so I would not put, I think those numbers are probably insignificantly different. And the time as I said, that the second one was administered may not be totally accurate, but with those caveats, I would say yes.
Because you disagree with the model that you testified about regarding time of self-administration, correct?
I don't disagree with the model. I think the time of the bolus dose may be displaced relative to the time Mr. Jackson was found dead.
Do you have an exhibit up there still, Dr. White?
I believe you left the exhibit that Dr. Ornelas generated for the two boluses.
Looking at defense quadruple V, Dr. Schaefer's simulations contain the effect site. You testified, I believe, last week regarding the effect sites. Where is the effect site shown on defense quadruple V?
I don't see the effect site shown. I do not see it on this diagram.
Does propofol act in the blood or in the brain?
Well, it depends on the actions you're referring to. In terms of effects on the central nervous system, it's obviously on the brain. On the cardiovascular system, such as the heart, it's obviously in the heart.
And do you know why, then, this does not show the effect site? Was that a request of yours, or was that something, again, Dr. Anästhesist did on her own?
She did this on her own. As I explained to you, I asked her a very simple question, and she provided me with these graphs. I only asked her about how much free propofol you would expect in the urine after 2 bolus doses compared to giving a 1,000 milligram infusion. I did not ask her to model theoretical effect site concentrations or any other parameters.
And I have an exhibit showing both the brain and plasma levels. May this be marked Peoples 244 for identification?
Yes.
Dr. White, based on the computer code you provided, Dr. Schaefer created a simulation showing the effect site. And I want you to know, I want to ask if you have any, if you take any issue with this diagram. It reflects both the plasma and the brain levels or effect site levels. Can you see that from where you're seated?
Yes, I can see it. I think I have tried to make the point that this effect site, which does not reflect any actual quantifiable measurements, is totally theoretical, is subject to huge interpatient variability, and so I don't put a great deal of value in those numbers. I'm sorry.
So did you ask Dr. Ornelas not to include the effect site?
I absolutely did not. I'll repeat again, if you would like, what I asked Dr. Ornelas. It was very simple. How much free propofol was in the urine? What would you expect to find in the urine? And what was actually measured in the urine at the time of autopsy, given that there was 550 mLs of urine and the concentration was as reported in the coroner report. That was all I asked Dr. Ornelas to do.
Would you agree in Peoples 244, I understand you've qualified your answer, but in Peoples 244, would you agree that the effect site on the brain, the difference in levels is trivial, basically 1.4 compared to 1.7?
I think I have said before, these numbers are meaningless to me. They have no clinical relevance, and they're subject to huge variability. I'm more interested at the concentration in the heart, which is what I think is the site of the event that led to Mr. Jackson's death.
Well, not in your March 8th report, you're saying that now.
My March 8th letter, which was, as I've said earlier, merely a preliminary evaluation based on very early materials, including numerous expert reports by the prosecution and the autopsy materials and some other documentation.
Your Honor, is this a good time?
Are you asking?
Yes.
Hopefully it is for the jurors. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take the mid-afternoon break. Please remember and follow all the admonishments. Be about a 15-minute break. We'll see you then. Thank you.